Okay. Have you started recording yet? Are we live?
Yes, yes. I'm recording all the time. I have the recorder that.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want me to say something, the big
first,
question from my point of view is why this announcement now? Why are they making this announcement now? Medjugorje, everyone over here has pretty much made up their mind about Medjugorje. I don't think anybody's talking about it. I mean, the big battle, from my point of view, took place when my book came out in the 90s. It was like a period from the 1980s up until the end of the 1990s, where everybody was, first of all, it's just nothing but enthusiasm at the beginning. And then I started saying things that were skeptical, and then there were skeptical books. Michael Davies wrote a skeptical book. His wife is Croatian. And it seems to me that it pretty much died down.
Outside of
yeah, but it needed it needed some kind of closure. Maybe why now? Maybe to start about what they actually said. So okay, so basically what they did not confirm the apparition. But they allowed the pilgrims to go there. That was basically the conclusion of the Yugoslav Bishops' Conference in the '91. They also said that there's supernatural, nothing supernatural is going on. So basically, they disapproved the apparitions, but they said that that the pilgrims can continue coming.
That's not my understanding of the bishop's statement. I don't think they said that there was nothing supernatural about it, but I don't remember them encouraging pilgrimages. I don't think that happened until Francis became pope and he appointed that guy Hoser.
That's right.
Because Bishop Zonich died with the convinced that he had been vindicated. This is what Bishop Peric told me. Bishop Zonich felt that he had been vindicated by the Yugoslav Bishops' Conference, and that I don't remember them saying at all that people can go there or should go there. It was basically nothing supernatural, and that was the end of the discussion, as I remember it.
Well, you have to have in mind that the huge church in Medjugorje, it's built in '69, and you have this like Marian devotion that is all throughout the Croatian people, and it's active and alive in Bosnia too. So basically, I think that was their aim, to not to overplay it, just to kind of remove the seers and the messages away from this culture of devotion. That's the way I see it.
They said that explicitly in the Vatican statement. They said that the seers are no longer the center of this devotion.
Yeah.
Now this is convenient for them, because as soon as you look into the seers, they've got all kinds of problems.
Right.
Yeah, but they did not. They haven't approved. They haven't confirmed the supernaturality of the apparition. It's not supernatural according to the Bishops' Conference, not even according to this document. I don't know. If you ask me, I don't understand why they even got into these messages. It's just
they deliberately in the statement. Yeah. They stated explicitly that we're not going to examine the moral lives of the seers. Well, yeah. Wait a minute. Lying is part of the moral life. So they're not going to look in to see whether these seers are lying or not. That was the whole point of Bishop Zonich's interrogation of the seers in the early days. He caught them all kinds of lies and misrepresentations, and that's what turned them against it. So now they're saying, oh, it doesn't matter whether they lie or not. This is the implicit story here. The seers are not important. Look, when was I talking with you back when Hoser was appointed. I think, did we talk about this back then?
Yeah, we mentioned it for sure.
Okay, so I asked Bishop Perich. Bishop Perich had just been moved out. Hoser had just taken over. And I said, I think the only plausible strategy here is money laundering. In other words, there's money coming from Medjugorje. So they want to ensure that the money keeps coming in, but they don't want to say that it's authentic. They don't want to commit themselves to that.
Well,
And I think the man who first articulated the strategy was Cardinal Ratzinger in the 80s. He said that there are these private devotions. There's these places that have devotions to the Blessed Mother. He said, who knows? It's so far in the past. Who knows whether the Blessed Mother appeared here, as long as there are fruits. Well, that got transposed to this situation, which is not a long time ago in the past, which was thoroughly examined at the beginning, and the church authorities said, no, there's no reason to believe this. And if they're lying, if this is the basis of the thing, then there are significant dangers involved with this thing. That's completely missing from the most recent statement of the Vatican.
Right.
Okay, you are connecting it basically with money laundering and bribes and stuff. Okay, so you're already now going into this political sphere. So for that, I disagree with you on one citation. So I have to correct you. So your famous saying "non è vero ma è ben trovato" does not mean it's not true, but it's a really good fabrication. It means it's not true, but it's just the thing that we are looking for, or it's not true, but it will really come handy, you know. Yeah. So that's the translation. So it really could have come handy for, let's say, for the Croatian national struggle and for the Herzegovina guys, for the guys living there, because it's basically geopolitically tense area. You have wars every 50 years there. You have this religious struggle between three big religions. It's in a way like a big divide going there. But at the end, I think that the Croatians are the big heroes here. So I'm kind of, my feeling here is that you are like steering it in the let's say that you're using a lot of anti-Catholic or no, maybe anti-Croatian propaganda here. You know, let's say blended into your research and into your statements. That's my gut feeling when I kind of listen to you. You know, the breakup of Yugoslavia, the money for the Croatian independence and stuff. It's okay. I'll tell you a story about the Herzegovinians, and then we can go back in history, maybe to see the bigger picture. Okay, so the Herzegovina guys, like, they are really living in harsh conditions. There are nothing but stones there, harsh climate, wars every now and then. So they're really tough people, you know, hardworking, and but there are certain, let's say, in Croatia, certain canards or some certain prejudice about the Herzegovinians, like one Herzegovinian guy will always help the other, bail him out even if he's guilty. He will employ another Herzegovinian, even some other guy is better qualified for the job. For example, there are two telling jokes, like it's prejudice. I know a lot of them, great guys. But one joke says, okay, can you swim? I said, no, but I have a written statement that says I can. Or the other one, when the young Croatian kid asks the father, what's the story with the Jews? I'm hearing, who are these Jew people? And I say, kid, you know the Herzegovinians? He says, yes. Well, Jews are like them, but globally. Okay?
Jews don't like them, but what?
Jews are like them, but globally, on a global level.
Okay.
Okay. So where does it all start? So I guess it rings some bells. Okay. So where is the root of the problem? Both with this policy of Vatican toward this whole thing, and let's say and the morality and the subculture that was growing around this place. So basically, again, we go back to the Turks, to the big dividing line. So Bosnia and Herzegovina is more or less taken by the Ottomans. The Sultan is now the head of the Roman Empire. He is, according to the Orthodox principle, he is appointing the patriarch. So the rebels are still, the smoke is going in Constantinople from the rebels, and the Sultan is appointing his patriarch. So every Christian under his rule has to answer to this patriarch guy. So this is basically the new setting of all these Orthodox churches. They're all state churches, and later they will transform into national churches. So basically, there are tribal churches, and it was of course unacceptable for the Catholics. So every bishop went out. The dioceses were closed. Some Catholics were totally underground, like priests that were totally hiding. But you have some exemptions that basically did what the Orthodox did. They got their own church, you know. They have these Franciscans from 1430 something, from the 15th century, are de facto a Croatian Orthodox church. They broke their tie with Rome.
National church, a Croatian national church.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, they just kept the Latin rite, so it's a minor difference. You know, you have in Croatia the guys, they're using the Byzantine rite, but they acknowledge the Pope, so they are Catholics. So you have both situations here. So they broke their ties with Rome, and they are functioning as a de facto autonomous, like Croatian Orthodox Church. Okay. So the Austrians reconquer the place. The Austrian Empire reconquers the place. They re-establish the Diocese of Mostar. They bring a bishop there. But hey, I mean, who is he to say anything? I mean, they have their deal, they have their diocese, and they are the other lung of the church, right? Who is me to judge? I mean, you said it yourself. It's practically impossible to debate the Eastern Orthodox guys, and you know, to see this rich history. They are just apostolic and blah blah and blah here, blah there. So there is basically a trap that let's say the Catholic view on the Eastern Orthodoxy, that Rome did it to itself. You know, you have the history of the conflict between the Orthodox Church and the Western Church and the Catholics in an encyclical that's called Omnes Orientales Omnes, I guess. I think it was Pius XII. But anyway, so obviously Bishop wants to take back his parishes, and the guys don't let him. And you just, I mean, by saying that they are the equally valid other lung of the church, you basically throw away your arguments of getting those parishes back. I don't know if you were there. I don't know if you noticed this strange relationship between the bishop and the Franciscans. Maybe some skirmishes or some defending of the churches and stuff. Do you know this?
Yeah, I would. The last time I was there, I went to Choplina, and the entrance to the church is blocked off with cinder blocks, and there's a big sign on the top of the church saying, "We're not going to give this parish back to the bishop." So it's this was on the mind of both Jozo Zovko and Tomislav Lasic, and I'm saying that when they saw this, they're trying to figure out what's going on. But the crucial moment came when when Jozo Zovko told the children to have the apparition in the church. That was a crucial moment.
Of course, that's nobody.
I think the Franciscans understood that this could be a powerful weapon against the bishop, and that they will never have to return their parishes to the bishop's jurisdiction if they can say the Blessed Mother is approving this parish, St. James Parish in Medjugorje. That was a big motivation on the part of Jozo Zovko and Tomislav Vlasic at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, we agree. But what's the plan? If you were the Pope, what would you do? You cannot just cut off these people and let them have their like Orthodox Church dressed as Franciscans. I mean,
throughout the history of the Church, there's examples of empires meddling in the Church or conflicts that happen in various moments. And afterwards, there's always, this is you go back to the earliest crises in the Church. After a time of persecution, after a time when the Church has been taken over, after a time when heretics have seized parts of the Church, there's always the problem of there's some groups that hold out. And because they suffered and they maintained a certain Catholic identity during the time of persecution, they want to hold on to what they have. The challenge always is, how do you heal those wounds and restore unity? And at least, and sometimes it takes centuries, but the goal should always be to come back and to be united under the bishop.
Okay, but here is the problem.
But throughout the history of the Church, this is a problem that arises because of persecution, because nations are taken over, because people somehow preserve Catholic identity through times of suffering. And but at some point, you have to kind of put an end to. At some point, I mean, the origin of the Donatist crisis in the Church, there was nothing doctrinal about it, other than there were a group of people that suffered during the persecutions, and after the persecutions died down, these people wanted recognition for their suffering, and because they didn't get it, they basically started opposing reuniting with the bishop and restoring unity to the Church. And so the goal should always be there's ways that the Church can do this. You can respect a certain temple, a certain shrine, certain religious orders are entrusted with churches in the diocese, but it should never be done at the expense of unity.
Yeah, in my opinion here, okay, but a big part of the problem is on the Roman side. Especially painful was the halt of was like the stop of the canonization of Blessed Aloysius Stepinac. He is basically he was a fearless guy, He before the Second World War, he was just fearless. He would say, even some reminds me a bit of Mike because he said, behind pornography we have these Jews and the Serbs because they are like undermining the morals of the Croatians, so they are promoting abortion and blah blah. And then during the war, he was just he saved like a couple thousands of Jews because his judgment was that they are innocent people and you should like protect them or what. Yep. And then after the war, Tito had the idea to like break off the Croatian Catholic Church from Rome because the Serbs are broken and they are much easier controlled, And he was also fearless and relentless. I mean, he's a Croatian version of St. Thomas More, basically, because he defended the Croatian ties with the Vatican, and he defended the church in Croatia of becoming this Orthodox tribal stuff, and
this
the
is
thanks, and the people that resent it is the other side. This was the traditional enemies. They don't like this big defender. So the story I got was that the Pope Francis wanted to go to Russia because Russia is under siege, basically, is in a lot of troubles. It would be really good to look on the photographs, to go there and to hug with the patriarch and stuff. And I agree. It's a good idea. It was this situation. It was a good policy move to go to Russia and to give hand to the patriarch to go to the Serbia. But then the guy, the secretary in the Vatican, got a message from the Serbs, and he said, "Okay, it's no way that we'll let him. What you should do, you should block the canonization process of Stepinac before we let you in. Before let you in Belgrade, in Serbia, and it will send a good message, Okay, so no problem. Who cares about that Croatian guy anyway? Well, block it. Okay, so they block it and say, okay, we blocked it. And he said, okay, so we have like a concentration camp. It's called Jasenovac. It's like a Croatian Auschwitz, and there is new Orthodox shrine there. It's called the Holy Martyrs of Jasenovac. So the Orthodox guy then proposes to Pope, okay, so really, like, to be brothers, you should come here to this shrine and take a knee, to apologize because, because of the World War, the Second World War, and we suffered a lot, and then it probably would not be good on the photographs, and so it failed. So the visit to Belgrade and Serbia failed, and also, let's say, the lobbying effort that the Serb Orthodox Church promised to do with the Russians also failed. But now these days the Serbs and the Russians are already they also have some troubles. So basically, it's no. So you can see here on one side, like the local guy really believing and like really dying, let's say, for this unity, and on the other hand, he's like a coin in some big poker game. Okay, we'll put him aside, and okay, it will look good. But the truth is, if you look from the let's say this tribal religious philosophy, you're basically a group of people with a sacred DNA, and everything, all your cosmology is basically Second World War from the year 1941 until 1945, and they just put it on repeat. And their big enemy is, of course, the competing church, are the Catholics. But it was, it was clear. But this is this is the thing that's playing out now here in let's say in the
but I think it's important to try to. I think we always want to. I think in these situations, there's a few things to keep in mind. Like, for example, you mentioned the case of Thomas More. I don't remember the exact years, but we're talking 300 or 400 years before the church canonized St. Thomas More. And a lot of those delays were because the church and the church still holds out. Ultimately, at some point, we want to bring the Anglicans back into the church. And the church, a lot of times, it moves more slowly than we would particularly like in our particular circumstances in these situations. And what you're describing to me is that, well, somehow the canonization of this fellow from the Second World War, it's going slower than you would like. But in part, if you just look at the history of the church, these things take time. Yeah. It sometimes takes several hundred years. And because it obviously all the data that you just gave, it's a sign that the church would be probably more than happy to canonize this guy, but the church is also doing something else. It's trying to also bring about the reunification of the of the schismatic churches of the East.
Yeah.
And of course, Russia is there, Serbia is there. There's other ones, but the efforts to really in earnest once again bring about unity between East and West, they began in earnest in the 19th century. Right? So they began long before the First World War, the Second World War, and the church wants to. The church is. I can guarantee. I mean, I could almost guarantee it that there's lots of people in Rome that are going to be more than happy to canonize a Croatian from the Second World War, from that time period. But this is what part of the governance of the church is about. It's about governing the universal church. And so there's going to be some things that might go a little bit slower than we would like, because, well, there's a huge mosaic out there that we're trying to preserve unity, and we're trying also to build unity as we go forward, proposing models of holiness, proposing saints. But so I wouldn't look at it as, I would try not to look at it as, well, the church is just interested in, putting Croatia down. I think it's more that.
No. I was talking about Mike. What you're talking, that's exactly the, let's say, this is it. I mean, those Franciscans are de facto, let's say, miniature Eastern Church, and it is the effort you're describing exactly. Like put their envoy, like, okay, you search to, allow the good stuff and kind of negate the bad.
So it seems to me, part of what's connected with Medjugorje is this effort to, within the context, if you go back to the 80s, this effort within the context of the anti-communist crusade to build up Croatian nationalism as a way of kind of having, and this is why one of the reasons I think that John Paul II didn't.
Yeah, well,
didn't say much specific about Medjugorje.
Didn't say anything about it.
Because he was hoping it would be another Fatima. He was hoping it would help bring an end to the Cold War. And so in a way, it was politically useful.
I don't know what Saint John Paul II was thinking, but I know what was the American influence in Yugoslavia.
There are people that have written biographies of him, and that's what they say from their conversations with him. Yeah, is that he had great hopes that Croatia would be like the end of the Cold War, like Fatima is Our Lady warns the children at Fatima about communism, and they don't know what communism is. And the church proved Fatima as an apparition. But then when John Paul II is in the 80s, and he's part of what he hopes to be bringing about an end of communism, again, from people who have interviewed him in biographies, what they write in the biographies is that he really had hopes that this was a genuine apparition, and he didn't want to say anything against it because he was really hoping it would be like the apparition for the bookend of communism.
Okay.
Now again,
I haven't read this. I'm more familiar with the political side and from the concrete side of the American influence in the former Yugoslavia.
Well, that's another layer.
That's the crucial layer because, for example, my father in the 70s was working for an American company in Yugoslavia, the Dow Chemical Company. For example, Slobodan Milošević was basically an American guy that spent more time on Manhattan than in Serbia. Like the American government sent to Yugoslavia 1,300 tanks. I mean, you can imagine the money. There was a hole in the ground in Medjugorje, and all the money from that hole could not buy a single tank. I mean, you had the huge river of the American taxpayers' money coming into Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was the richest and the most developed, let's say, quote unquote, communist country. What kind of a communist country it is my father is working for a Dow Chemical Company on the island of Krk. And the penthouse guy, what's Bob Guccione, owns a hotel just nearby. and on the airfield on the same island of Kirk where I live, there are American jet fighters painted with the red star on it. I mean, you don't have to you don't have to invest in the demise of Yugoslavia because you already own it. They installed Slobodan Milosevic here, but after Tito died, they backed him partly because they have this anti-Catholic bias, so they picked a Serb that ruined it all, you know.
Sure.
Well, there was a change. There was a containment policy, which was the basis of American foreign policy after Kennan's long telegram in the 1950s, and that changed with Reagan. It was no longer containment. They wanted to end it. They wanted to end communism rather than just tolerate it and give it hegemony over Eastern Europe. And that was also John Paul II's goal. He wanted to end it, and I think he made a deal with the devil. And I think he regretted it later on.
Yeah,
he regretted his collaboration with America because once you let the Americans in, they take over and they ruin your country with all kinds of ideological or the sexualization of the country, all those type of things. So
yeah, I totally agree. But Medjugorje was not the entrance for the Americans because the Americans entered the big way. In the year is 1953 when the Socialist Federative Republic of Yugoslavia signed the Balkan Pact with NATO. So we are basically from 1953 Yugoslavia already was like, let's say, not a full member but honorary member of NATO. So it was some time before Medjugorje.
Right. I understand what you're saying. But I think something similar happened in Iran. I mean, the Shah was the American puppet during the 1950s, up until the 1970s when he started making a lot of money and he started to get uppity. And at that point, the Americans turned on the Shah. I think it's exactly analogous to the situation in Medjugorje. They didn't want the Shah in. They supported the Ayatollah to bring him into power. The Ayatollah took money, collaborated with the Americans on the hostage crisis. The Ayatollah Khomeini got $24 million from George H.W. Bush to continue the hostage crisis, and it ended the minute Reagan took office. I mean, this within minutes. So I think that this change in policy is what happened in Yugoslavia as well. Of course they supported Tito because he was a thorn in the side of the Soviet Union. But at a certain point, they wanted a different outcome, and that was Reagan and John Paul II. They wanted an independent Croatia.
No.
Now, to talk about the Orthodox,
they did not. I mean, we are again. No, they did not want an independent Croatia because they said so, and they were the last country to recognize the independence of Croatia. In fact, I just told you about the 1,300 tanks given to the Yugoslav People's Army, and there were, I mean, you can still see them in the museum in Croatia and in Slovenia, and the Croatians were basically unarmed, like defending against this huge armada. And what the Americans do, they vote in the UN the arms embargo. So basically, you are defenseless and unarmed, and you'll have to stay that way until they finish the job. The guys, you gave just 1,300 tanks, you know. So I would disagree. Even the foreign, you have the public notes from the Foreign Committee of the Croatian Parliament, and you have the American diplomat there telling to the Croatian Parliament Foreign Committee in the 90s, America will never recognize independent Croatia. It makes no sense, and it makes no sense because it's the Orthodox, let's say, this kind of tribal propaganda that knows only how to explain the world between 1941 and 1945, and it's like replicating it all the time. So it's Nazis again, it's Americans, you know, Nazis, and you know, and it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean,
I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying that it happened. And we're talking about the difference between Nixon and Kissinger.
You're talking
Reagan
that
and
America
whoever.
wanted the independent Croatia, but how wouldn't then it recognize the independent Croatia if they wanted independent Croatia?
What years are you talking about?
So let's say Milosevic came into power after Tito. Tito died in 1981. You have in the CIA reports that they were basically good. Tito was their ally, and they were the deep state department, the CIA, whoever runs the stuff, wanted the new Tito, and basically they picked up Milosevic because he was a banker. He had a bank on Manhattan, and he was their guy. You know, he was.
You're talking the 1980s.
Yeah, the 1980s. So already 1986 and 87, Milosevic basically comes into power in Serbia. Why? Because he has a deal with Manhattan Chase Bank. He comes back to Serbia. He opens this banking office, and he's just handing money left and right. You know, you need a loan. No, no problem. He just signs like millions of dollars of loans of Chase Manhattan Bank's money. So with that kind of backup, it's easy to come into power anywhere. So he grabs the power in Serbia, but again, it's a federal republic, so you have 6 entities plus the autonomous regions. And what he does, he stages a color revolution. Oh, that's familiar too. It's called yogurt revolution or anti-bureaucratic revolution, where some people gather, throw yogurts and stuff. It's a pre-planned event, and basically they take down the government of these provinces, and he puts their men on the wheel. So that's your takeover of Yugoslavia by an American guy, financed by the American money. And in the 88, they're already planning to to enlarge their ethnic territory. I mean, because they are flaming nationalists. That's why they chose some flaming nationalists to rule the federative republic with like 7 nations under him. So yeah, they're really smart, those planners. It's not.
I wanted to ask you, do you have any idea why the Vatican would issue this statement now, based on your understanding of what's going on in Medjugorje? It seems to me that there were plenty of pilgrims coming to Medjugorje. It wasn't, they were, can you explain, do you have any idea why this statement will be issued now?
Yeah, the new envoy changed. The new envoy came to Medjugorje. They made some kind of a deal. And the deal is the fact that the bishop is silent and the Franciscan are silent and not commenting publicly. There's some kind of an agreement. They leave the pilgrims, they leave the devotion to Mary, but they are trying like to push aside all these messages and visionaries and all this strange stuff. That's what they do, right? I mean, and I really can't see what would be the alternative here.
It seems to me that the way it was before seemed to be the ideal situation. That's what I said when they brought Hoser in. They already had their ideal situation. He was going to promote the pilgrimages, and they should have just left it alone. You know, just let things go. Don't say anything. I don't understand why they were motivated to make a statement like this, especially since it was so stupid. Yeah. It kind of discredited itself. I don't know what got into these people in Rome to make the statement. Are they trying to distance themselves? I'm really at a loss. I don't understand the motivation to issue a statement like this right now.
I think that I don't know. I think that they are in their mind. They think that in the local population, let's say Croatian or in the pilgrims and stuff, they overplay the importance of the seers and of these messages to this Marian devotion, basically a movement. Because in reality, these big devotions and these Marian shrines are like embedded in the Croatian culture. Because whenever like the people were in some dire situation or in some really hard time, and where you had basically two options: you start some kind of revolutionary movement and some armed rebellion, or you get into this Marian devotion and you just shut off from the world. So it happened a lot of times. For example, when Kingdom of Yugoslavia was formed, there was orchestrated and directed big push into these Marian devotions, and so it's not unknown also in that area. And I don't know. I think that they think that these seers and these messages are really important, and if they don't regulate it somehow, they could lose the place. That was.
What do you think from Rome's perspective?
I think they just wanted to. I think in the end, the one reason they might do it is that in the this may seem very small, but that in the situation where it was before, there was no approval of that people could make pilgrimages. So when they first sent Bishop Hoser to Medjugorje, they weren't approving, or they weren't giving any kind of permission to actually have a pilgrimage to Medjugorje. And so, for example, people would come to me and they would say, "Should I go to Medjugorje?" And I would say, "Well, no, because the church hasn't approved. The church hasn't approved trips there. So go to Lourdes or go to Fatima." And so the only difference now is that, well, now they're saying, if you want to go to Medjugorje, we're not going to oppose it. We don't want to have you feel like you're disobeying somehow church authority by going to Medjugorje. That's the only change.
Is this money? Is this money talking here? Did someone come to someone in Rome saying, "Look, you guys get a lot of money from us here. The pilgrims are not coming. We need a state from you to bolster our tourism here"?
Well, it could be, because there's always a shortage of money. There's always a shortage of money in Rome.
Tony? Did you have a sense that the pilgrims were not coming to Medjugorje, that it was dying out?
During the Corona crisis, it was it was certainly that way. But I heard some rumors.
Do you think they stopped coming after Corona? That it had a bad effect on it?
Yeah, Corona had a bad effect for sure. For sure,
about
it was a big crisis there, because most of the
last 2 years.
Yeah, most of the pilgrims are Italian, if I understand correctly.
Yep.
Yeah, but well, what I wanted to say. Yeah, but there is another thing. I was talking to a Franciscan guy, and he said, so we have these beautiful monasteries, really long tradition, and just no young Franciscans. Nobody's coming for the job, and the only province that has, like, say, abundant vocations is them, the Medjugorje guys. So they have the highest vocations, like high church attendance, is the highest number of sacraments. I think there is some money, okay, some gas stations and stuff, but I don't think that this decision is that cheap. It's more about, you have almost the Blessed Sacrament parish effect here. You have people going into church, you have like huge number of Eucharists and a huge number of confessions, big number of young Franciscan priests. So what's your plan? I mean, what are you going to do with this? And in the, like, you can just leave all this, let's call it spiritual asset, to this miniature Orthodox Church and let it develop. I don't know what was the plan B. Should we convert those people? I mean, should we send a missionary or something? Should we convert the Orthodox? I mean,
do you remember when we went to that island where they had the monastery?
Yeah, of course.
Well, they had no priests to replace those priests there.
No, there was just two guys. The entire island with the monastery and the houses, and one father and one brother. Yeah. But they don't have such problem in Herzegovina.
So is Medjugorje the only place that's showing growth in the church in Croatia?
You have a number of locations, like in big cities on the coast, but it's like a shadow of what it used to be. But it's also not because there is some big drop in Catholicism, but there is a big drop in Croatians. We shrank for
demographic problem.
demographic
That town you
breakdown.
showed us to with that real narrow street,
Yeah.
that one with the real narrow street, there was no one living there.
Yeah. It used to have 3,000 inhabitants on its peak, and now it's like 300 old people and some 50 young families.
So many countries in Europe are like that now, it seems.
Yeah, it's a combination of disregard of humane vitae, like sexual liberation, and in Croatia case, immigration. A lot of them went to Ireland or Germany or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. I think we covered it, Tony.
Yeah, I don't know if I could.
Tony?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is like, well, in the light of this, it's really like this Croatian independence being financed by Medjugorje. It kind of turns off quite a lot of Croatians because they know the story and it's not.
Well, actually, one of my the first time I ever heard about Croatia was in 1990.
Oh, good.
And there was a guy coming around. I was a university student, and there was a guy making the tour of the United States, and he was connected to the State Department, and he was raising money for Croatian national independence.
In 1990.
In 1990, yeah.
Why did
Was
not? Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know?
And actually, so this guy, it's just my experience, but this guy was talking about Medjugorje. Like the whole introduction of his talk was, there's a village in this nation. It used to be part of Yugoslavia, and then he spoke about the Cold War, and then he spoke about Medjugorje and all the miracles that are being done there. And by the way, there's this conflict brewing in the former Yugoslavia, and we need to have Croatia as a free democratic society, not as a socialist or communist society. That's going to be Serbia. Croatia is going to be free and with the West, right? So that was my first.
That's the State Department promoting.
That was my.
Yeah.
It was a guy connected to the State Department who was bringing this guy around the country to speak at various university environments. And anyway, that's again, I was an ignorant 18-year-old American, and I knew what Yugoslavia was, but that was it. I was just a freshman in college, but that was my first introduction to Croatia, to the reality of Croatia, because before that I only knew it as Yugoslavia. So at least in my consciousness, and then of course in the 90s, we're committed to bombing Serbia, right? That's also part of the whole Clinton administration. I'm just saying that's the American consciousness. Our awareness of Croatia is very much related to our antagonism against Serbia by the time you get to the late 90s.
Yeah, it's really late 90s. It's actually the beginning of the 2000s, and so we are talking about a decade of difference. So
it's the Clinton administration.
If the guy was promoting it, so it was 2 years. The first country to recognize Croatia did that in the almost a year and a half before US did that. So if America was really so eager to recognize Croatia, they could have done it. I mean, the Croatian independence, according to the constitution of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, it was in the constitution of the country. It was said that it's constituted by these 6 socialist republics: Socialist Republic of Slovenia, Socialist Republic of Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So you had 6 republics. Yep. Every republic had its own government, its own police force, its own political system, and in the constitution there was written that they have the right for self-determination. Okay, so it's not the war for the independence, because the independence was a legitimate and legal act envisioned in the constitution. Okay, you can check the constitution of Yugoslavia, and by the way, the head of the strongest, let's say, Republic of Yugoslavia was like an American puppet. They basically launched the war in the 90s against the other republics. I mean, we're actually arguing about history, but okay, it was not.
Well, no, I'm not arguing with your story. I'm just telling you what's the American consciousness.
I see the American.
And it's perfectly, your position is not opposed to mine, in the sense that it's perfectly possible that the U.S. State Department could care nothing about Croatia as a nation.
No.
That it could very possibly be that they were promoting a certain kind of supporting a certain kind of Croatian nationalism for all sorts of other, like, wider regions in the world.
No, what I see what
you're seeing is just like the technical legal thing that they did in the international court of the United Nations and in the international law. But that doesn't forego there being a faction within the State Department that is trying to, use some sort of, that's trying to basically create an antagonism between the Serbians and the Croatians as you're trying to, work out your independence in the 1990s.
No, there was no, the U.S. did not have to to bring any antagonism, because there is an antagonism historically, as obviously you can see.
It would be exacerbated.
Yeah, but
they would be exacerbated.
What I see.
As you said, exacerbated.
Yeah. But what I see was the problem with the American policymakers is that at the point when Tito is dying, if you read the the memoirs of the guy that founded the CIA in Belgrade. You can see the guy that's like from the American embassy in Yugoslavia was about to be closed, because they said there's no point in having an embassy in Soviet satellite. You have a guy in Moscow, and all of a sudden the guy has the CIA office in the communist country. There is an honorary NATO member, and the guy's memoirs, you can see that. Okay, Tito's dead, but you can feel this, how should I call it, this dislike to the Catholics, and he sees the Croatians as Catholics, but they are mostly like cultural Catholics. Yeah. So we as the backer and the financier of the Yugoslav Federation will give all this power to Serb, of course. He's an Orthodox, we like them, kind of, they are good guys, they are the real church, and they gave it to this flaming nationalist that directs it. And the American bombing of Belgrade in 1999, I would compare it with like Soviet intervention in Czechoslovakia. It's the same thing. You basically intervened and punished your own guy there that betrayed you in a way.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. That could be. That makes sense to me.
All right, Tony.
Okay, my wife is waving to me. Okay, so.
Good to meet you, Tony.
Nice talking to you. I'm okay. So you have some Croatian perspective here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Send me the link. Okay.
Okay, I'll send you the link.
All
Thank
right.
you, Mike. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.